In 2016, Rabi Ribi was released, a difficult bullet hell metroidvania filled with tons of bosses, a map that encouraged sequence breaking and exploration, all while titillating the senses with the ripe, supple flesh of freshly drawn anime waifus. It's a fantastic game in its own right, but playing it in 2024, you can really feel the rough edges in how it all comes together. Enter Tevi, the not-really-a-sequel that makes Rabi Ribi look like a proof of concept. Seriously, everything that Rabi Ribi does, Tevi does better. Well, maybe not always better, but definitely more. A lot more. So, like its predecessor, Tevi is in the rare group of games that can be called a bullet hell metroidvania. I explained that term in more detail in the Rabi Ribi video, so I won't exhaust it here, but this mashup of genres is at the heart of the identity of these games. In other words, you, as a vulnerable sack of meat, need to repeatedly move in and out of the tightest places you can imagine. Oh, okay, I'll stop. Dodging is the name of the game. Bob, weave, and squeeze through the most precarious bullet gaps you've ever seen, and wonder how the hell you didn't just get hit there. Like, did you see that? I thought I was dead. Rabi Ribi wasn't content with just dodging, though. It had a fully fledged action combo system filled with a lot of complexity and customization through its large selection of combat-altering badges. But remember how I said that Tevi is just more of everything? Well, here's basically every sigil in the game. They're called sigils now, by the way. There's sigils that increase your hits in a combo, sigils that change your attack strings, sigils that grant you special moves and abilities that activate contextually in the heat of combat, sigils that power up your ranged attacks in various ways, and even sigils that grant you more points to wear more sigils. I mean, we've really got some yo dog, I heard you like sigils energy up in here. I don't even know how to start with this monstrosity. This page represents what happens when a developer realizes they can, but never stops to ask whether or not they should. I have the answer to that, by the way, and it's no, you shouldn't. Okay, maybe that's a bit harsh. I absolutely know that there are people out there who look at this and get a little excited with the possibilities of theory crafting and optimizing the ever-loving crap out of the builds that all of this represents. But I honestly found this extremely overwhelming. There are 250 total sigils, and you can wear a very significant number of them. A lot of them synergize with each other, others might have detrimental effects that you need to counterbalance or choose to avoid, and even more of them change the way your character controls in combat by adding different moves, or even changing what certain buttons will do depending on the context. For example, every once in a while, my character would do this super dash attack move instead of a slow dash attack move, and I never quite understood how to trigger it. This means that sometimes I'd find myself out of position in a fight and take damage because I was expecting a super dash and got a short dash instead. I hope that all made sense. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, just go and find the badge that gives you the effect and figure out how it works. And yeah, that's definitely a solution. And I'm not even being sarcastic with you when I say that, but at a certain point, I think I just said, screw it, and just accepted whatever the game gave me. Rabi Ribi had a decent melee combo tree, but Tevi's is insanely complex with these sigils. The main combo string can be altered in a ton of different ways with additional moves and effects, but it gets kinda hard to maintain the desire to commit to learning what these sigils do as you collect your 100th one. The only mercy with this is that you're given a pretty generous allowance of points to equip sigils with, especially if you explore well, and every time you pick a sigil up, you're shown the effect and immediately given the option to equip the thing right then and there. So that's what I did. If the sigil sounded useful and I had the points to spare, I would equip it immediately. If I didn't have enough, I would probably forget about it and then move on with my life. Hell, that's what I did with most of the sigils I put on too. But that little quality of life feature, the option to equip immediately, made the system so much more usable than it otherwise would have been. And that's where I want to put the most praise on Tevi, because the game just feels really damn good to play. The menus are snappy, the controls are responsive, the combat is crunchy and satisfying, and there is an absolutely addictive sense of momentum that comes with playing this game. One of the things that I look forward to the most when I pick up a new Metroidvania is the slow discovery of what endgame traversal will look and feel like. How fast and fluidly will I be able to move through this world once I've unlocked almost everything, and how much will it feel like something that I can actively get better at? There's few things more satisfying to me than absolutely flying through a world that, many hours ago, was a nightmare to traverse. I'd say it's a sort of commodified version of I don't know, playing piano for 20 years and having the ability to improvise a jazz version of the Super Mario Bros. Theme as a result of that hard work. The raw feeling of mastery and the sense of being unimpeded by something that once gave you trouble. Yeah, Tevi definitely has that. It doesn't have the brilliantly fluid momentum of the Ori games, but what does? I did find myself wishing for a more explosive horizontal movement option by the end of the game though, especially while I was just rushing through zones trying to finish collecting everything. But that's kind of a minor issue. Exploring more out-of-the-way locations just to try to collect the last item or two, and not even knowing if they're actually over there is practically a staple of the genre, and it's rarely explicitly fun. Speaking of collecting things, it ranges from really fun to really annoying. Instead of automatically marking the map when you uncover a room with something in it, if you didn't explicitly see the collectible, then it won't be marked. This means that there's a ton of secrets that you might miss behind false walls or destructible terrain, and will probably only find when you're at the end of the game with a fully upgraded magical compass that acts as more of a radar telling you how hot or cold to an undiscovered item you are. So at the end of the game, you'll just be sweeping the map mindlessly until the compass starts flashing, and then you can start looking around. But that's only in the latter half of the game where you get this ability. And that's fine. The biggest problem really is that the game is just too large. On hard mode, the game took me about 26 hours to complete, stopping just shy of 100% completion because I simply couldn't find the final item that's left in this massive world. I've seen reports of people taking around 40 hours though, so no matter your skill level with these kinds of games, Tevi is absolutely going to keep you occupied for a while. Depending on how much you vibe with this game's style, both artistically and mechanically, you might find that Tevi overstays its welcome a bit. I think I would have been happier if the game's world was 2/3 of its current size and stopped at around 15 hours of game time instead of 25. But judging games like this is awkward because even though reviews are subjective at their core, the feeling of something overstaying its welcome is probably up there with the most subjective takes that you could possibly make. If you're someone who loves the intricate and highly complex sigil system, then perhaps 26 or even 40 hours isn't enough time to fully explore the depths of this insane level of customization. On top of that, this developer has proven with Rabi Ribi that they're ready and willing to support their game with updates and content for years, and I suspect they'll expand Tevi more and more over time to give you more value. I've seen fans of Rabi Ribi lament Tevi for the changes that were made between the games. Tevi might have the DNA of Rabi Ribi, but it clearly isn't that game. To me, a mere casual who didn't care to replay Rabi Ribi over and over again, to speedrun it and do challenge runs in it, Tevi, I think, is the much superior game. Everything just feels better. And despite my wishes that the game were just a bit smaller, the amount of stuff that exists in this little game is seriously impressive, all while reining in the horniness of the previous game. Mostly.
Oh my god, look at his junk!
One last thing I've got to mention is this game's story. I don't have any grand analysis for the story of Tevi, but I can tell you that I didn't find it very interesting. I sort of got into the plot around halfway in, once everything settled, but before that I had a hard time remembering the incredible amount of nouns that they threw at me. There is a ludicrous amount of characters to meet and talk to, and most of them are directly involved in the larger, overarching, world-destroying plot that many JRPGs just kind of fall into. And honestly, that's what this game's story feels like. A grand, world-scaling JRPG where you meet and grow closer with your fellow misfit companions and proceed to save the world. There are some very interesting concepts like the decay spreading through the world and negatively affecting the inhabitants, implied interracial tensions, human experimentation, and even political corruption involving culling people with undesirable traits from the race through murder. Unfortunately, most of these plot points are explored at only a surface level before abandoning and never truly resolving them for newer, shinier subplots. And the game beats you over the head with its plot all the time. There's so much text to read and dialogue to go through and characters that you're supposed to care about that it can be exhausting to keep up with. And on top of that, it's not even well written, it's just exposition after exposition, expository dialogue, one after another. It's not exactly complex, but I can at least say the characters are somewhat fun. But if you decide that you absolutely don't care about the plot even one little iota, there's always the option to skip it entirely, built right into the game. A very nice inclusion. I think that if you're interested in Tevi even a little bit, it's worth giving a shot. Tevi does a lot of things right, and even though I'm not a huge fan of raw hours of enjoyment per dollar calculations, there's no denying that if you really enjoy Tevi, then that value approaches infinity. Not only is the base game big with a complex combat system, but there's a few difficulty modes above the basic hard mode if you're feeling really spicy, and a wide array of stackable customization options like speedrun mode that gets rid of dialogues and events, free roam mode that removes boss requirements and allows you to play the game more as an exploration sandbox, and a mode that randomizes all of the game's sigils. And in case you need reminding, the sigils are the main way of customizing your combat experience, which means that a random set of sigils could drastically change the way you build your character up from the beginning. I very much enjoyed my time with Tevi overall, despite how much I personally wish it was a bit shorter. But there's no denying that this game is an incredible accomplishment from the development team. This game is huge, feels incredible to play, and the amount of detail in both the pixel work and the anime-style vignettes is just wonderful to see. You can really feel the care that went into this game, and it feels good. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks to my beautiful patrons for helping fund my madness, and thank you for watching. Next up, I think I might finally rock out on Grime. In fact, I think I'm gonna go play that right now. So I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.